Oh, come on. When's this email going to come through? We need some good youth intake players, like 5, please. Just get us up to that player limit. Some homegrown good players. Oh, here we go. Right. Checking emails. Open. Right, here we go. I'll take that.
There's a party in the streets and the city's on fire.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 7 of this New Zealand Builder Nation with sometimes your whites, but at the moment with AFC Auckland. And coming up in today's episode, it's our first youth intake of the save. Hopefully we'll get some players who can be of some use to us, seeing as currently we've got no homegrown club players for the registration for the A-League. And also off the back of that, we're going to play 2 games either side of a month-long break. Unfortunately, didn't get quite as far as I was hoping off the back of yesterday's episode, but at the start of January, we will take on the Newcastle Jets in Auckland before we head over to Canberra and take on bottom of the league Canberra United, no longer managed by Steve Corica, after he got the second in between then a transfer window where we might be able to pick up someone on a free. So if you're looking forward to that coming up in today's episode, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the new series here on the channel, also consider hitting that subscribe button and turning that notification bell on as well. It is greatly appreciated. But first up, in today's episode, we have just had our first youth intake here at AFC Auckland, and this is what it looks like. It's a decent youth intake. It's 3.5 star rated. That's okay, especially because our facilities still not too great here in terms of the youth stuff at AFC Auckland, especially in terms of youth recruitment. I imagine that the Wellington Phoenix will be getting some better players through their youth intake at the same time, especially because that youth recruitment is of a much higher level than we have here at AFC Auckland. So it's not a bad youth intake. The star does look to be Nick Baker, a deep-lying playmaker, 4.5 star potential, 1.5 star current ability, 15 years old. He looks like he could be a decent prospect in the future for both club and country in this save, but also got a few players who have slightly lower potential, albeit Brett Ingham also 4.5 star potential. He's essential attacking midfielder. He could be of some use to us, could be a decent backup in behind the likes of Stephen Malk and Bruce Izumi here at AFC Auckland. They're the 2 standouts, and behind that we've got some players like Matt Wilson, a right winger, as well as that we've got Ben Evans with 3.5 star potential, yet another central midfielder. So being quite looked after here in terms of some young central midfielders at AFC Auckland. Alan Passmore is a left back come centre back. I think he's more natural as a centre back, but height wise might be better suited to being a left back. And going down this list a bit further, to be fair, most players will be signed because our under-19s are quite light on numbers at the moment here, with this being the first year of the save. But Christian Milicic is a right back, also a 3.5 star potential, and making our way down the rest of the top talents. Lovray Gilbo, 1.5 star current ability, which is actually quite high compared to most, and he is a right winger with 3.5 star potential, and also got a couple of players further down with 3 star potential, a goalkeeper in Stuart Garcia, as well as that a central midfielder yet again in Brock Bark, brilliant name. And going down a bit further, one more player with 3 star potential, a centre back in Thomas Foster. I think those are the players we're probably going to sign from this first youth intake here at AFC Auckland. It's a decent one, could have been a bit better, but certainly could be a bit worse. Hopefully we can invest in those facilities over the next couple of years of this save and start to get some much better youth intakes, and hopefully that will be a way to really strengthen up both this club team and the All Whites in the future of this save. But to be fair, so far not been doing too badly at all with AFC Auckland. As you can see, 2 games off the back of the end of yesterday's episode, where unfortunately the Central Coast beat us for the second time this season. Before then, a really good win over the Western Sydney Wanderers. If you missed the episode, I'll leave a link to it over in the top right corner. You will notice that we did suffer back-to-back defeats. That was in the League Cup second round. We went out straight away. Unfortunately, I probably rotated the team a little bit more than I should have, and we got knocked out on penalties after giving away 2 penalties in regular time. We also got one given to equalise things in the 85th minute, but unfortunately our rotation players couldn't quite get the job done. To be fair, quite a few first teamers did come on for the penalty shootout, but unfortunately we lost that it was 4-2. One interesting thing with the penalty shootout in this Australian League Cup was the fact that it kind of went 1, then 2, 2, 2, as you can see there through that score sheet, which my head might be blocking. Hopefully editing Shaun has put that now in the bottom right corner. But a very interesting shootout, just for the way that the order went. Wasn't as traditional as you get in most parts of the world. That was a bit different. Wasn't expecting that, and to be fair, that might have affected us with the miss in particular by Sinclair. Did not get a chance to bounce back from that, but unfortunately we lose the penalty shootout, go out of the Australia League Cup in our first game in that competition. But thankfully the board weren't too worried about that. If we go and look at our club vision, they're still quite happy that we were competitive in that one game that we played. So thankfully that's a game that we could have afforded to lose. Would have been quite nice to stay alive in that competition, because that's the competition that runs throughout the rest of January, which is why there's a massive gap in between these two fixtures in today's episode of 1 month. If we beat Avondale, we might still have some games coming up in between the ones against the Newcastle Jets and Canberra United, but it does mean for the rest of the season we can focus our attention on the A-League. And thankfully, off the back of a couple of weeks off after that loss to Avondale, we bounced back nicely with a pretty convincing 2-0 win at home over Western United. Just before halftime, Jack Henry Sinclair gave us a 1-0 lead, and just after halftime, Mitch Oxborough put one away to make sure we picked up a fairly comfortable 2-0 win. The only issue from this game, Nick Sullivan did pick up an injury, but thankfully it comes at a time where the fixture list is quite light, so it does mean he'll just miss this first game of today's episode. But analysis-wise, you can tell there we were well and truly on top throughout that game. Stats-wise, Western United did not get a single shot on target, hardly our most dominant display in terms of overall shots, but certainly we were on the front foot, and thankfully we made it count. And it does mean, despite the fact we did lose that game to Avondale, doesn't affect our league position, and we are in third on the table, a chance for us here to potentially sneak back above the Western Sydney Wanderers and get back in a title fight, try and close the gap on the Central Coast Mariners off the back of that loss that we suffered at the end of yesterday's episode. So hopefully a chance for us today to win 2 games in the A-League, especially considering the opposition that we are taking on. First up, the Newcastle Jets, who are pretty much smack bang mid-table, down in 9th. We bet these guys, I believe, earlier in the season. Do actually need to check this. We'll go back to the schedule. Could have been around the time we were drawing on. In fact, we did beat both these teams back off the back of the last time we lost to the Central Coast, 2-0 away at Newcastle, and then 4-2 at Mount Smart over Canberra United, albeit those guys do now have a new manager. But first up, we take on the Newcastle Jets, who are mixing their form a little bit, coming to this one having bounced back from being thumped by the Phoenix in that Australian League Cup second round with a 1-0 win over Perth. But hopefully with this one being at Mount Smart, it is a winnable game. As I said, just one injury to Nick Sullivan. It does mean Tewa Tamer will start over him, but hopefully a chance for us here to continue our good form in the A-League as we take on the Jets. And here are the team sheets for this first game of today's episode. This one, our home one. It does mean there's a bus trip coming up later on when we do take on Canberra United while they are still in the A-League. But as I said, just the one change to our usual starting 11. That is the Tamer is in for the injured Nick Sullivan. But apart from that, we are at full strength there with Newcastle. Hopefully we can do the double over them this season and start to do that against a few more teams in the second half of the season. And that should hopefully keep us in a title fight. Also Newcastle, one of the teams we do not clash with colour-wise off the back of that boo-boo that I could not fix in the editor before we got this save underway. Newcastle in the gold and blue, thankfully, doesn't clash too much with our blue and white hoops. They had the ball early there from the kickoff, but thankfully try and pump that one deep and we control it at the back. Now Mitchell pumps that one forward and he picks out there. Sinclair actually is able to control that quite nicely, despite the fact there was a defender who I thought would be marking him. Now Bazookas is on the ball, makes his way out left. Now Tormeen, wonderful first touch there from Gweveen Tormeen. What a signing he is proving to be. One of our free transfers, the Frenchman, one of our few foreign players here at AFC Auckland. His 14th goal of the season, and I think this is only his 18th game or something. He is going it close to a goal a game. That first touch there just gets him round his defender, beats their Scott from a tight angle just inside that far post from that left-hand side of the field, and we take a very early 1-0 lead. And just past the 15-minute mark, we get the next highlight in this game. Still 1-0 up off the back of that hot start that we did make, but it is Newcastle here who are in possession. O'Neill starts to make his way forward and picks out Dane Ingham, a New Zealand international reformer one, down that right-hand side. Thought there might have been a chance there for a penalty, then a shot there, but thankfully that one goes just by the Jets there. Can feel slightly aggrieved, looked like a bit of dodgy stuff going on there inside the box, but thankfully the referee let it flow and they missed the target. We are still 1-0 up, but shortly off the back of that, now a chance for us to do something on the attack. Sinclair there gets beaten to the ball by Grimaldi, but thankfully just tries to pump that deep before it goes out, and Cullen Elliott can tidy things up. Now Elliott is back on the ball down this right-hand side. Nice pass there for Jack Henry Sinclair, close to the goal, but Grimaldi robs that off him, but thankfully poor clearance, and we are still on the attack. Elliott will pick out Sinclair inside the box, plays that one back to Elliott. Now a tamer over here to Neil, picks out Tormeen. He's already on a hat-trick, sweeps that one home. It looked pretty clear cut. Don't think anyone there was offside who influenced that goal, and we should take a 2-0 lead here just shy of the 20-minute mark, but we don't because someone was offside. It was Sinclair. This is past where I thought he had the ball, and I'm not really too sure if he's in a position there where he influenced the goalkeeper's effort. That feels like a very pedantic decision, but for some reason, we're still only 1-0 in front. And not too long off the back of that goal, which was ruled out to Sinclair, we'll try and praise the boys here, but a highlight does start Elliott on the ball, and we're doing some good work here down this right-hand side. Cullen Elliott is having a really good first season here at AFC Auckland. You have to wonder if the Phoenix should have kept hold of him, but Neil now tries to square that one, and this time Tormeen will pick up his second goal of the game yet again, that one assisted by Neil, and this time no offside ruling, which I still think was a really debatable one. Actually, I think it was pretty harsh, that one, but thankfully we do get our cushion goal eventually. That one tucked away nicely. Tormeen already on a hat-trick, and we're 2-0 up. And only a couple of minutes off the back of that second goal, which this time got awarded. Now it's a corner here in our favour. Unfortunately, can't pick someone out at the near post, but Tormeen with a really good chance there, running onto that to make it a hat-trick inside the first half, but unfortunately that one just off target. Still 2-0 up, albeit shortly off the back of that. Newcastle try and do something on the counter-attack, but thankfully that ball too deep. Our defenders can tidy that up. That standard defensive line working very well for us this season here at AFC Auckland. Now Elliott plays that forward to Sinclair, squares that one nicely for Gianni Bazookas. We're going to have to wait here yet again for a VAR check, but I think this time he might have been onside. We'll keep an eye out here on if the players' arms do go in the air to celebrate. They do, and the goal is awarded, and we make it 3-0 before halftime, and the Jets here have been well and truly grounded by AFC Auckland. Sinclair, I think that ball got a bit of a deflection, and Bazookas, he will pick up a goal after seeing up the first one, which was scored by Tormeen. That is now 3-0. The Jets here need to strike before halftime, you'd think, to keep this game alive, but there is a highlight from the restart, and Grimaldi on the ball down that left-hand side at left back. To be fair, he's been quite good at times when trying to mark Sinclair, pumps that one deep. Somehow Hoffman does get in behind, tries to square that one. Goodwin goes down, but to be fair, that ball was played in behind him, so thankfully the referee does not blow a penalty, albeit this highlight does continue this time. Bert Homer will put that one away. In fact, Bert Homier didn't quite read that right the first time, but they do grab a goal back here, and that could be quite important. Otherwise, we might have had this one all wrapped up before halftime, but now it is back to a 2-goal deficit, just not quite marking people up there down that left-hand side of the Newcastle attack. To be fair, good finish into that top right corner, and it's 3-1 just shy of halftime. And indeed, that was it for the first half. Lots of action, 2 goals to Tormeen, to be fair, but unlucky not to grab a hat-trick with that goal, which did get ruled out through offside, and then Bazookas made it 3-0. Unfortunately, just off the back of that, Bert Homier did grab one back for the Jets, but pretty happy with that first half. Everyone out there is on a good rating. We'll just tell them to keep on going and get the second half underway with that 3-1 lead. And it hasn't taken long here for the first highlight of the second half. Oxborough for us tries to play a ball over the top there, looking for one of our attackers, but unfortunately too much on that one. Scott can control this, pumps this one deep, and unfortunately Hoffman does win that one in the air, plays it back to the goal scorer. And if Newcastle can score here just after half time, this is well and truly game on. Bert Homier able to square that one for Archie Goodwin. Trying to figure out there who that was that ran away from that player. It was Winston Reid. Pretty average defence there from our captain. And as I said, this game now well and truly on a goal there either side of halftime. Bert Homier having a big impact on this game, and Goodwin there pretty much unmarked inside the box, he can beat Basilage, and we're kind of bottling this one now only with a 1-goal advantage early in the second half. And just about to make our way up to the hour mark of this game now. Everyone out there is still on a pretty good rating, despite the fact we are kind of bottling this, but Taylor Tamer has just picked up a yellow card. Our only defensive midfield option on the bench is Louis Toomey. We'll bring him on with our first substitution to hopefully help us hold on to this 1-goal advantage. And a free kick for us here with around about 15 minutes left in this one, thankfully still holding our 1-goal lead. Bazookas on the edge of the box. That one takes a deflection from the initial ball in, and Bazookas will rocket that one in on the volley, on the bounce, and that should be the goal, which finally does put this game to bed, and thankfully doesn't look like we are going to bottle this. Not too sure there who we were trying to pick out from that free kick, but thankfully Bazookas unmarked on the edge of the box, and that is a stunning strike by him and Tormeen having good games in this one. He makes it 4-2, and thankfully you'd like to think that'll be the goal to see us home in this one. And off the back of that, I think we can start to make a few substitutions. Oxborough down to Red Hart. Now, to be fair, not too sure who to bring on for him with no defensive midfield options. I think Habaliers might be the best one. Toomey can go forward to the DLP. He can play as a DM. Also, we've got Stefan Malk out there on a 6.8, I think that was. We'll bring on Bruce Azumi. He can get some game time. Can the youngster also, Cullen Elliott, only going fairly. Stefan Negro can come on for him. We'll make those substitutions. Now, we should have put this game to bed with a 4-2 lead. And shortly off the back of those substitutions, off the back of that fourth goal, which was scored nicely on the volley by Bazookas, now Winston Reed's down to Red Hart. Will play things safe, albeit no more centre-back options on our bench. Of course, we've only got 3 centre-backs here at AFC Auckland. I think the Hitaran we can bring on and shuffle things around here just a little bit. Azumi, he can go back to a defensive midfielder, a Hitaran in that camera. I think that will work for the last couple of minutes of this game off the back of taking that 4-2 lead. And just about to make our way now into injury time in this game. Thankfully, not much has happened off the back of that fourth goal and those substitutions that we did make. Stats-wise, definitely a game that we should have been winning. But early in the second half, the Jets did make that one interesting by making it 3-2. But thankfully, a late goal there, a really good one to Gianni Bazookas off the back of a first half double to Tormeen. And also amongst the goal scoring action today was Bazookas, who in fact picked up a double. Of course, nice ball there from Sinclair in the first half. And eventually, we pick up a comfortable win, which for now will see us jump up to second on the A-League table. Now I'm going to have to go forward a month before that second game of today's episode. We'll see if we can do any business free transfers going in to our second season of the save, and we'll come back, do a bus trip before we take on Canberra United. So a bit closer than it should have been in that first game of today's episode, but thankfully we pick up 3 more points. We have dropped back down to third on the A-League table, albeit the teams above us now have played 19 games. We've only played the 18. A chance for us here to go back up to second, and you like to think there's a decent chance of that as we take on bottom of the table Canberra United. We beat them at Mount Smart earlier this season. Might be tougher now as this one is over in Canberra. Also, they've got a new manager. As I said, Steve Corica got sacked. These days, Peter Clutke is in charge of Canberra United. And to be fair, these guys, while we've had that month off, actually went quite close to winning the Australian League Cup up until the final, where they got smashed 6-1 by the Western Sydney Wanderers. The Western Sydney Wanderers, they win the first bit of domestic silverware here for this season, but hopefully we can compound the misery here of Canberra United. The team that Canberra United beat on their way to the final, it was the Phoenix. So thankfully, I guess the Phoenix are not going to lift some silverware instead of us this season. Of course, we still have a chance, of course, of winning the A-League, but I mention the Phoenix because Giancarlo Italiano, Chiefy, has done a very silly thing. Let a player's contract expire going in to the start of next season. I'm not planning to sign too many players off the Phoenix in this save, but I couldn't help myself for this one. Alex Paulsen will be joining the club come the start of next season. He's leaving on a free and coming up to the place he was born in Auckland, so that is a big transfer on a free. Of course, we know all about him. I've managed him in a couple of friendlies with the New Zealand national team. He's definitely better than the likes of Marinovic as well as Basilage. It might mean that Marinovic is someone we look to let go of going in to the second season of this save, because to be fair, he's not really good enough to be an All Whites contender, but a good signing for us here. I think the first choice New Zealand goalkeeper with a fair bit of potential on a free transfer. Quite happy with that, as I said, wouldn't usually pinch players off the Phoenix, but if Chiefy's going to let Alex Paulsen's contract expire, it's going to be really hard to try and turn down players like that who are interested in coming up to Auckland. So Alex Paulsen will be our new first choice goalkeeper going in to the start of next season, but off the back of that, we can get stuck back into the A-League off the back of a month off. We've played 2 friendlies against the under-19s, 2 4-2 wins in those games. Unfortunately, a couple of injuries coming out of them though. To be fair, only one that's still there, but it does mean I'm going to rotate our team a little bit going into this game with the likes of Sinclair, Bazookas, Reed, and Hataran, all quite injury prone at the moment. And also Stefan Negro, he's out for a wee while, having got injured in the first of those friendlies. Some damaged knee cartilage does mean he's out for 11 days to 4 weeks. So unfortunately, no backup right back for a little while. And unfortunately, the players that we signed in that youth intake, they're still too young to feature in the A-League. So not doing with a right back for these next couple of games. Hopefully that's not an issue. Hopefully it's not the way Cullen Elliott has been going, but hopefully we can get by without him. And also Taylor Tamer is suspended, but thankfully Sullivan is back from his injury before we get stuck into this clash, which really we should be winning against bottom of the league. We'll do a bus trip while these guys are still in the top division. So time here for our probably lone bus trip in Canberra for a little while, and the hotel that we've picked out is the Avenue Hotel. It's a little way away, about 3 kilometres from the actual stadium, but to be fair, there's not much near the stadium, and to be fair, not much at all in Canberra. It's usually rated one of the most boring places to go, or at least it was back when they did some Super Rugby player surveys of the players from New Zealand, Australia and South Africa. They often said Canberra was boring as bat. So we'll see if we can find anything interesting on this drive. But be fair, this hotel does look pretty decent. Nice little outdoor area. They've got a gym. There's a restaurant. We should be good over there for this trip and this game against Canberra United 1. You'd like to think that we'd be winning. There's some more pictures of the hotel. It looks pretty tidy. Bed and breakfast package. We should be good with that. And we'll see what there is to offer on this bus trip. It's about a 12-minute trip, but as you can see, most of it is going through a nature reserve. We'll see if there's any interesting stuff that pops up there, but Canberra, not the most exciting place from what I've been told, or at least from what I've heard. We'll see if there's any stops on this bus trip, or if it's just going to be a look around the stadium. So this is our starting point. I think this is the hotel that we are staying at. To be fair, it doesn't look too special from the outside, but maybe around the back it's a bit more fancy looking than what it looks there. In fact, there it is up there. They've given me a poor starting point. That looks like a much fancier hotel than whatever that thing is, but there's our hotel. Time for us to make our way eventually towards the Canberra Stadium, but as I said, not sure if there's going to be too much on the way. And honestly, there was not much happening on that bus trip so far, but we're eventually getting our way now towards the reserve either side here of this road. So it's quite an interesting drive here. Looks a little bit hilly, but hopefully the New Zealand boys will be able to cope with that, seeing as we usually have some quite hilly drives here over on the side of the ditch. Now to be fair, can't see too much of the nature reserve just yet, but we'll see if anything does pop up. There's a kangaroo that does get in our way, like a Bathurst race, but at the moment, not too much happening on this bus trip. Okay, we found some kind of lookout here around this nature park reserve area, but unfortunately can't actually get ourselves to go that way. So we're not going to be able to have a look at that, so we keep on making our way here down this road. Eventually, it looks like towards the stadium. Canberra living up to those surveys from those Super Rugby players, as I said earlier. Okay, starting to now get back to some signs of life. We're coming up here to an overbridge that's a bit more interesting than most things I've seen so far on our way to the stadium, but still, this place ain't up to a lot so far, it's fair to say. And we're almost up to the turn-off now, where we start to go right towards the stadium, and it's been like this for most of the way apart from that lookout. So unfortunately, this one's not been up to much this bus trip, albeit at least in terms of the scenery on the bus. Things are pumping, the music's going. I might have gone to the beers already, because this should be a game that we absolutely win, but we'll see if it affects us and we do put out a bad performance. But we now start to make our way a bit closer to the stadium. Okay, and finally there's something to look at. It's the North Canberra Hospital. Hopefully none of our boys end up here after the game, but yep, that's the first thing of note we've actually seen so far on this bus trip. the hospital. Hopefully we won't be back here after the game, but time to make our way now back towards the stadium. Okay, we're starting to get a bit closer to the stadium now. This is probably the most interesting landmark on the way to the stadium itself. If we go down this road, this is the Australian Institute of Sport, where most of the good athletes do go. So to be fair, this is probably quite a nice facility. It's just hidden away a little bit, like most things seem to be on this bus trip that we are going on. But a quick stop by there just to grab some water before the game. And now we're not too far away from the stadium itself, thankfully. And eventually we've made our way into the car park here at GIO Stadium. There you can see the entrancey bit. If we can finally get our way there, we'll see if we can actually get there following the road, or if it's going to be funny like some previous stadiums have been. But there's the proper entrance for GIO Stadium, aka Canberra Stadium. Let's see what this one looks like. To be fair, a ground that's also like some other grounds we've seen so far in Australia, probably more recognisable from rugby union and rugby league, the Canberra Raiders and the Brumbies in Super Rugby. But there's the entrance. It looks a little bit better than some of the other stadiums from the outside. Looking at Suncorp Stadium from the road view, this one does look a little bit better. We'll try and make our way inside, but not too sure if that's going to fly, so might need to change the view here. And after a quick look, there's not even a 360 view inside the ground, so we're going to have to do this a bit differently to the ones that we've done before. So Canberra, not too big on the in-person 360 stuff here on Google Maps. We'll just see if that's any better. No, that's not better at all. We'll try and find here a picture of inside the stadium. And honestly, that's the best picture I can find of inside GIO Stadium. Doesn't look like the people of Canberra have found out what mobile phones are yet, because there's not a lot of pictures. This one taken in 2019, so maybe they're catching up to the 90s. But there's what GIO Stadium does look like for a football game. It's actually a decent stadium, at least in terms of what I've seen of it on TV, but it doesn't look like anyone's picked up on 360 view or anything like that. So unfortunately, that bus trip, a little bit meh, but that might be Canberra for you. Hopefully we can get out of here ASAP with all 3 points. And here are the team sheets for the second game of today's episode. Here are Canberra coming into this one off the back of that pretty good run in the Australian League Cup. But in terms of their league form itself, they're in deep trouble. Probably won't be in the A-League next season. In terms of us, as I said, quite a bit of rotation, including in goal Marinovic. He will start, and also some other rotation there. Also, Sullivan comes back in for a tamer with that suspension, but trying some rotation here. Hopefully it won't backfire, but if we're going to do it, this is a team we should be able to get away with it against, and hopefully still find a way to pick up all 3 points while giving those injury-prone players a bit of a rest. And it's taken about 10 minutes, but the first highlight of this game did look like there it might be in favour of Canberra in the predominantly green with the white sleeves. We are on the attack here. Jack Henry Sinkley, a lovely ball that for Jamal Rainiers, who today starts up front instead of both Jello and Bazookas. But unfortunately, that's a good point-blank save there from the Canberra goalkeeper, and unfortunately not able to do too much off the back of that corner. So it's still 0-0, albeit quite short off the back of that opening highlight. Now a free kick here in our favour, albeit Canberra, they do head that one away, but Oxborough is there to tidy things up. Stefan Malk makes his way down the right-hand side, cuts inside a bit before picking out Cullen Elliott, still in the team because of that injury to Stefan Negro. But thankfully this time, Jamal Rainiers, the Rocket Man, will poke that one home, his first goal for AFC Auckland in a competitive game. And thankfully some of these players might be delivering, seeing as they won't get much game time in other competitions now after our Australian League Cup run only lasted the one game against Avondale, who to be fair might be in the A-League next season based on their position in the second tier of Australian football. But thankfully our rotation players doing a decent job for now. We take a 1-0 lead around the 20-minute mark, and now it's Tormeen who starts to cut inside. Can he continue his great form this time? Can't quite. That one's off target, but we eventually take a 1-0 lead in the first half of this one, and now it's a goal kick here to Canberra United. There's quite a few highlights here around the halfway point of the first half, and Tormeen is back on the ball. Stefan Malk starts to make his way forward, does get in behind, but unfortunately he also misses the target, so we're still only 1-0 up. And the highlights keep coming here just shy of the half-hour mark, albeit this one's a bit more dangerous. Free kick here to Canberra United. Thankfully, it just sails over the bar. Marinovic not forced into a save. He was pretty average against Avondale, and also when he conceded 2 against the youth candidates for our under-19 team. So thankfully not called upon, and we're still 1-0 up. A few minutes shy of half-time. We'll see if anything else happens in this first half. And it looks like we'll get into the sheds here with a 1-0 lead. Thankfully, our rotation players in some areas are doing a decent job. And looking at the ratings out there, again, no one out there is doing too poorly. Canberra so far, just that one shot, not on target. We really should be in front by more than we currently are. Need a few more shots on target in the second half, and hopefully we can pull away and pick up 3 points here in Canberra. And just shy the hour mark, we eventually get the first highlight here of the second half. Hopefully we can find a way to win this ball off Canberra and grab a cushion goal at the moment. This does feel like a game that we could blow things in, but thankfully Mitchell there does get on the end of that ball, so a chance for us here to hopefully grab that cushion goal and not leave Canberra in this game for too long. They've taken some points off teams at times this season, and of course did look quite decent in the League Cup with their new manager. Now Rainiers there did look like he might be in behind, but good pass there to find Lobo. Can he square this to someone? Good tackle there, but thankfully he does keep the ball, plays that back to Oxborough. Now Sullivan might have looked to line one up. He eventually does. That one goes very close, but unfortunately comes off the underside of the crossbar. Canberra just clinging on to some hope in this game as they're still only 1-0 behind. And about to make our way now into the last 20 minutes of this game, and I'm just going to check here on some players. I think our left-hand side so far in this game, a bit average based on the player ratings. We'll bring on here Michael Neal for Nathan Lobo. He was decent, but Tormeen today actually slightly average. The Hassan Jallo can come on for him and hopefully help us grab that cushion goal. And in fact, only 5 minutes off back of that previous substitution, now it's Nick Sullivan down to a red heart. Louis Toomey does look like our only defensive midfield option on the bench yet again with that suspension to Teo Watema, so he can come on, still only 1-0 in front. And shortly off the back of that most recent batch of substitutions, there is a highlight here. Hopefully this time we can grab that cushion goal yet again. We are on the attack. Toomey does some good work there down that right-hand side, puts that one in. I think that was Jallo, but yet again the woodwork comes to the rescue of Canberra United. Nearly an assist there for the Oceania Footballer of the Year 2023 on our bench in Louis Toomey. That was interesting. That was, I think, mostly through his performances for Eastern Suburbs in the National League before we signed him. But another highlight here, and hopefully this time we can grab that second goal. Does feel like it's coming, but still just giving Canberra United here some hope they can catch us on the break. But this time it's Neil who does get in behind, and finally we score that second goal. It's his first one for the club as well, so a few players are breaking their duck here at the Canberra Stadium. We make it 2-0, and surely that will put this game to bed. It's taken a lot longer than it should have, but finally we look like we should put Canberra Neil here. Good work there to get him behind, and our left back will pop that one into the top right corner. Off the back of that, we might sub some more players just to make sure no one on a high injury workload does get injured in this game. Callan Elliott's down to a red heart, so I think Winston Reid will come on. We'll just see who might be the best option at right back. Looks like it might be Adam Mitchell, so he's going to play right back. Reid and Havalez as the centre backs, and also we've got one more sub, and Jack Henry Sinclair was quite injury prone coming into this game, so was Hitaran, but hopefully he can handle the last 10 minutes of this game. So those are our last couple of subs off the back of us taking a 2-0 lead, and in fact there's a corner now in our favour. We try and put that one near post, nobody home, but Mount plays that one back to Oxborough. He's in there right inside the byline, squares that one nicely, takes a good deflection, but it's put away by Stefan Malk, and we make it 3-0, and that's a much more comfortable scoreline than it's been for most of this game. Bit of a scrappy goal, that one, but thankfully finds its way into the back of net. Some good 1-2 there between Oxborough and Malk, albeit it is a decent deflection on that shot, which he tried to put away. Bottom right corner, find its way into the bottom left, in Canberra and all sorts of trouble now in terms of their survival in the A-League. It's not looking good as we make it 3-0. Now as a highlight, as we make our way into 4 minutes of added time, Adam Mitchell goes quite close there from that corner, but thankfully it took a lot longer than it should have, but we eventually put away Canberra United by a scoreline of 3-0. It was 1-0 for most of the game off the back of that first half strike to Jamal Rainiers, but we left it late there with goals to Michael Neal off the bench and also Stefan Malk to just make sure that we did pick up all 3 points. To be fair, Canberra didn't offer too much in attack, but it was 1-0 for a long time, so it was a little bit concerning. They might do us dirty and FM us, but thankfully we pick up all 3 points. That should keep us right near the top of the A-League. I think that will move us back up into second position. 2 wins in today's episode, a month in between games. Thankfully, we were still sharp and pick up a 3-0 win over Canberra United. So two pretty convincing wins for us there in today's episode, albeit it was quite tight in both games for a little while. Did make things a bit nervous, but thankfully in good form either side of that month-long break, seeing as we weren't taking part in the Australia League Cup. Also had a decent youth intake, and also pinching Alex PAULSEN off of the Phoenix going into next season to be for the Phoenix with a 3-1 win over Darwin to escape a little bit away from that relegation playoff zone, but still only 1 point between them, the Perth Glory, and Adelaide United. Also, Western United are kind of in that fight as well. They could still be in trouble of dropping down to the second tier, but hopefully they do stay up, despite the fact that next season they won't have Alex PAULSEN. As I said, usually wouldn't do a transfer like that, but seeing as he was available on a free, and to be fair, they have quite a decent, promising young goalkeeper in the brother of Cully Heald. I think they might get by without Alex PAULSEN next season when he comes up to AFC Auckland. But if you enjoyed today's episode with that youth intake, that signing, and those two wins, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also remember to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well, so you do not miss out when a new episode does drop on the channel. Next time we'll come back, we'll see, as I said, was going to come back a bit later for today's episode, but trying to get stuff organised before I go on my honeymoon in a couple of weeks' time in real life. Not that long for you guys, just to make sure that videos are still coming out. Brisbane are down the table. I think we should be beating them. City in a decent spot. Victory, not so much. I think we might actually go forward a bit more off the back of today's episode. Not too sure exactly when. We could do a double of the Melbourne Victory and Macarthur FC, because those two teams just in behind those top couple on the A-League table. But also, our last couple of games, there are some big ones in amongst that, including Western Sydney Wanderers. And also in amongst then, there is the OFC Nations Cup. And I think we're involved in that, not at the moment in terms of the scheduling for the New Zealand national team. But when we click on this, it does say that we should be entering in the first round. So I think at some point we'll be taking part in that OFC Nations Cup. Just not too sure exactly when we'll actually be entering that tournament. But that could be something interesting that we could be taking part in on the international front. To be fair, that should be something which we are winning. But also want to bring you guys some action from the A-League if there is a chance that we could lift that title. And at the moment, that looks like it is a possibility, seeing as we are second on the table. We'll come back at some stage around late February, March for tomorrow's episode. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.